So, one of the big things that has been talked about since the stimulus has came through, since the Biden administration has been in power, has been inflation. And I think that it's kind of an interesting conversation to have because whenever we discuss inflation, I think the main thing should be what is inflation? What is the inflation rate compared to 2018, 2019? And you'd find out that it's actually 1.71, which is lower. So what does that mean? Why are we having inflation? Partially, things are just crazy right now. We had a gas company pay $5 million to Russian hackers to reopen up an oil pipeline. Now think about that. They had them, they had them held hostage, and they were whatever. In fact, they've left such a window open for these Russian hackers that they could just go do it again and say, hey, this time it's $9 million. There's been no tracking of these hackers, by the way. And they didn't care because they wanted to get the oil out. And that's one of the big things people are pointing to is all the gas is going up. Well, I almost can guarantee you by midweek next Wednesday, it wouldn't go up any higher than what it would have went up had we, I don't know, been through a pandemic. Because that's another thing. Being a business operator myself, I can tell you every year you set a goal of increasing your profits. You know, you worked hard for last year. You want a little bit more money in your pocket, so you take about 2 to 10%. Places like Walmart, believe it or not, go at about 10 to 15%. It seems hard to match those kind of numbers, but they find a way to do it. And really, what you do is you increase the prices on certain products that you have a lot more leeway in. You have the ability to gain a little bit more money here and there. And then the really popular items, maybe you drop them a percent or two while you're then increasing the percentage of other items that you can get at a cheaper cost. And ultimately, you play this little game of back and forth. Sometimes you actually even confuse your customers by taking a really hot item and dropping it 10%. Then you say, hey, it's on special sale for this month. It's on sale. We're dropping. You don't tell them the percentage you drop it, but they know they're paying less. And then for that entire month, they say, oh, it's on sale. Then when you raise it back to normal, you actually raise it 15% of what it was originally. So for the rest of the year, you're making 15% on that item. Your customers unless they're a real penny pincher, they don't know. And there you go, there's your 10%. But last year was different. Why? Because we would do anything to keep our businesses going. And at that point, cash was king. Whatever we could do to make a profit, we did. And even if it wasn't a growth at all, but it just kept the doors open and it kept a skeleton crew there. And more importantly, it kept the owner's bills paid and, the fear of bankruptcy staved off for a little while. We did that. In fact, I myself didn't raise prices at all. In fact, I dropped prices. But we are opening up again. Life is continuing again. I've got to go back from, okay, what would it have been in 2020 plus what's it going to be in 2021? So the most important thing to take up when you hear about the inflation is understand that we just basically put a pause on life last year. And now it's coming back. And now it's opening up. All the people who maybe had a thought about the people who weren't able to pay their rent and we're staving it off and we're saying, well, they should pay their rent. You're dealing with that as well. Everyone is dealing with that. And it's not
Yeah,
just the,
and I would also say that's a great thing too that we're opening back up because what does that increase? Competition. And competition may offset some of that inflation by people going, oh, well, so and so's opened back up. I have to compete with them again. And so prices may drop in a lot of ways based on competition after some of the inflation takes a hold.
and really too, like one of the things that you kind of point on there too, which is it's just more the case, is it's actually warehouse and wholesale that are increasing their prices across the board. And the reason why they're doing it is because we're opening up. People have jobs. We're spending money. Hey, they have money. We can earn it now. So let's do that. Let's not just try to keep the doors open anymore. It's not time to survive, it's time to thrive. And that's exactly the mentality. But it will stave off, as you're saying, because new wholesalers are going to come around, new businesses are going to come around. The most important thing, though, to acknowledge during this, and I know a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it, is that this means the stimulus is working. The fact that a company will now say, hey, I'm going to charge you more, actually says my confidence in the economy working is higher. Because if I didn't have that confidence in the economy, I would keep my prices as low as possible to get whatever I can by saying,
Yeah,
no,
and
I know you
houses are
have the
selling.
money.
The housing market's better here in this little Kansas town, and that's kind of not been the case for a long time. Like my new neighbor who purchased his house that was across the street from me. He just came from California, and he purchased a home. I mean, and that's been a rent house for almost a decade, and that kind of blew me away that somebody from California just moved to Kansas to purchase a house. It blew my mind.
Oh yeah, no, the housing market is going crazy. The biggest inflation that we're seeing is in the used car market, and that actually has to do with another issue. And I'll point it to this: we don't have an inflation problem. We have a supply chain problem. That's why the prices are going up. It's a supply and demand. The important thing to acknowledge, though, is that there is demand, which means the economy is working. If there was no demand, then the prices wouldn't go up. And our supply chains are opening up again. They're becoming more stable, and we're getting more products on a weekly to monthly basis, depending on what market you're in. And again, that will stave off, and some of it won't. Honestly, yeah, it's not going to, because there is a, a period between 2019 and 2021 where people weren't raising prices on anything. Well, all of that does have to catch up. So that is something to pay attention to. But ultimately, the most important thing is we have a supply issue. And I point to the used car market because, as Scott was talking about before, semiconductors and um, components, electronic components, are why the used car market is actually raising like crazy because new
Yeah, you could
cars.
probably part out a car that had those parts, and like even a junker or even cars that have been totaled. Think about the value of their computers and their stuff that are just in those cars. That somebody's banking on that.
Well, and the prices of new cars are either going up or it's just hard to buy a new car. So, hey, you can buy a used car. And now the used car market is saying, hey, we're getting more people. Let's raise our prices. And honestly, the inflation rate on that is 10%. 10% more. If it's a $3,000 car, it's gone up $300. $20,000 car, it's gone up $2,000. I mean, is that a lot? Yes, it is. And it's a concern. Although a $20,000 used car, it better be one hell of a nice car.
Well, but I will tell you, cars are that may be just the basic rate inflation for cars this year, but automobiles, as far as the standard inflation, are much higher than most all other products
Yeah.
in the last. Considering in 1998, I purchased a Toyota Tacoma 4x4 that only had 28,000 miles on it. One previous owner that drove it for a little bit and then traded it in for like a Dodge Super Diesel because I bought that vehicle basically brand new with little miles on it for 14.5. You know what a Toyota Tacoma, just like a 4x4 base model Toyota Tacoma now runs at least $50,000.
Well, yeah, that was a good purchase though. Like,
Well, even then, though, the brand new version of that, it was a year old, so it was really just the age. But I could get a new one for about $4,000 more. So the difference in a $18,000 or $19,000 truck in 1998-99 versus a $50,000-$55,000 truck this year, it's completely outpaced. So automobiles are
yeah,
very expensive regardless, and that's all over the board. There are still cheap automobiles to be had, but it's a lot easier for people to get into a less expensive car, and a car maybe that just doesn't have a computer. That's okay too. You can install that crap.
No, you're right. You're definitely right on that. But the inflation numbers is what we've seen across the board. And if you want to take out, um, to kind of to shed a light on some things, if you want to take out food and gas, which I know a lot of people would say, well, that's not fair, but if you did, prices are actually down. That in itself is crazy to think about that. That that actually kind of contradicts the supply demand thing. But when you add in the instability of food and gas, then you're seeing these kind of crazy zigzags all over the place. Now, gas, on the other hand, like I said, I personally believe that we've got two things we're working against. We're working against this hacking ring that shut down the entire East Coast. And that in itself, like, you can't really blame that on any administration or anyone. I mean, that situation. Now, there has to be some other talks about cybersecurity and things of that nature,
Yeah.
100%. But the actual gas shortage due to that, you can't really blame on anyone. What typically happens, Scott, you're old enough to know I'm old enough to know, what happens during about this time every year? School's out, people are getting antsy, ready to go to
Yeah,
the
they usually jack up
Bahamas.
prices for every, and this
Yeah,
year
what what
probably
what happens to gas?
especially more.
Yes.
People go on their traveling, and when they travel, they vacation and they vacation and they fill up their RVs, and gas typically goes up at this time. I mean,
And
it's kind of a normal thing.
and you're right about this year too. I think it's even bigger.
Exactly.
The
Everybody's been sitting back home for the last year. They didn't do their stuff. Well, I didn't go to some concerts and I didn't go to some other stuff that because they got canceled that refund my tickets. People are like, well, I got to get back out there, and enjoy my life, live my best life. Isn't
Dude,
that what it is?
there's an entire like YOLO kind of mentality going on right now. Dude, even in myself, who is a homebody, doesn't like to do a lot of stuff, I'm thinking about going to Sacramento for the Punk-O-Rama coming up in September because there's a laundry list of bands I want to go see. And I'm like, dude, that would be a cool vacation because we had this last year where we couldn't do anything. And again, if I'm at that level where I'm like, I want to go to California to see punk music,
Yeah,
I can't
exactly.
imagine how everyone else is
In
feeling
August,
about life.
I should have been at Faith No More in Dallas.
See, now if you hear about Faith No More coming back in, let's say Denver, are you going to be like, you know what? I think I'll go.
Well,
Like, I
the
might
Wild
as
Party
well.
said that they were going to be in Chicago, and I'm like, oh hell no, I ain't going to Chicago for that.
I mean, I don't know, but there is that whole mentality going on, and I think that's another thing to also think about. And we have shortages everywhere. I still think that's a huge thing. My own business. But I'll tell you this, to give anyone kind of a shiny kind of outlook as far as the shortages are concerned and things of that nature. Um, there's a lot of companies that are struggling, rebranding and not even rebranding, it's not a fair word, finding new outlets. My own company in the same situation, um, been dealing with a distributor for the last 4 years, and out of nowhere, they raised prices on me per item $5. Now these items sell for anywhere between $20 to $40. You raise that price $5 on me, that's a lot going into my customer. But
Yeah,
instead
I
of
can't believe they did that personally. That's so far and
it's
above and
ludicrous,
beyond
right?
any kind of inflation. I think they're just trying to take advantage.
Exactly. And they cited shortages and whatever, and there are some documented shortages, but instead of sticking with them and passing it on to my customers, I found a new distributor who
Yeah,
much fairer price and everything's working out and it's good.
we hope they're listening. So,
No, but I'm just saying, like, I think there's a lot of this going on, and there's a lot of companies, no matter what it is, I've seen
yep,
inflation
let that
numbers.
competition, let the old American competition just, creep in and squash some of this because once the trucks get back on the road and the supply line chain kind of balances out because there's a lot of people with a lot of wants right now, especially in the home building industry. Like
Yes.
what is it, like $50 sheets of plywood, and
Well,
they
and
were
there's
$9 before.
and yeah, because there's a whole situation going on with the northeastern America and Canada, and there's that's another big thing going on with wood. But yeah, you're right. Like it is gonna balance itself out. It sucks like for the next couple months that we're gonna have to get through that. Some of this stuff I think is gonna be resolved earlier than that, but
Yeah,
um,
because we don't have a wood shortage, by the way. We
no,
do. We don't strip forests. They literally plant millions and millions of trees a year and rotate on huge pieces of land to facilitate that. There's no deforestation in America to fund your wood.
no, exactly. And I think in every group, I was just thinking about this now. In fact, I remember sending you Amazon listings for the first generation Xbox One, the 500 gig one. If you guys are dorks, you know what I'm talking about. It was look, it's a fine Xbox. It works great, but it's like 9 years
More
old.
expensive than the Xbox One S, which is a
Yes.
better machine.
I
What
mean,
in the hell?
we're talking what, 450, $500 on the average listing of this thing? That was more than it
Yeah,
was
that was
brand
an
new.
official Amazon listing too. It wasn't like a third or fourth party deal. I mean, that's some kind of Amazon it was a refurbished program through Amazon, and I'm just like, who would be stupid enough to? I don't know. Apparently, if they think they can
Well,
do it,
and when you look at the other listings next to it, you see, oh, it's right on track with everyone else selling theirs. And I don't know, prices they're this way and that way, but I argue that we don't have an inflation problem right now. We have a supply and demand issue. More so, we have a supply chain issue. And we have some, I don't know, really messed up circumstances that no one in this country has really ever been through. And no one at any age
and
has
oil and gas
been,
companies are private companies. They're not insured or
right?
protected in a lot of ways, and I say that tentatively by the U.S. government. So if they say they have a hack and the prices go up, well, they don't have I guess when it doesn't come to the reserves, they don't have the feds don't have the ability to go in and say prove it. They just don't.
No, no,
They
you're right.
say no,
Zero
just
trust.
like any other business, even though the entire world runs on it. I mean, not that it is a lie, but 2 weeks before, there were news talks about gas shortages associated with supply line problems, and then all of a sudden, it didn't happen for the prices, but then all of a sudden there was a hack, and it's like,
Hmm.
I don't trust these oil and gas
You're
companies.
right there. I didn't even think about that. Bad news though for any of our listeners who were hoping that there was going to be a fight between me and Scott. I think you've avoided all confrontations that could happen because
Whatever, Dick.
that that was
Your
the
hair is
one
stupid.
that I think was the only one we were going to potentially like everything that we've covered. There was a couple instances where we could have had a difference of opinion that yeah, even so, like we don't even. It hasn't been like what almost a year have we've had a really good one. But yeah, everything coming up from now, I don't believe is gonna cause a
Whatever, dude.
fight.
Psychics are
Um,
real.
except for I don't believe in UFOs, and we're definitely gonna be talking about UFOs coming up, and we're gonna be talking about University of California removing SATs and CAT, whatever things I didn't
Yeah.
take. No, I did. Anyway, we'll be back. Thanks a lot, guys.